Hey, how's it going, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be just covering automations in Tallyflow. Automations are a great way to, the name kind of explains itself, but automate repeated processes that, you don't want to necessarily do manually every time. These could be things like following up with the lead after they've submitted a contact form, sending a document if, the project stage has changed, but basically it allows you to reach out to your client automatically or even update various things on a project so you can stay on track and keep everything sort of organized. The way that automations work is it's a workflow form builder, so you can add triggers. Every automation requires one trigger for you to have make it you know a sanitized automation, or just for our system to work in general. So when you create a new automation, and by the way, to create an automation, you go to automations down here and then click create automation. And as you can see, a trigger is already added to the automation. To change the trigger, you can click on the trigger node and choose the trigger type. We have a bunch of different triggers that you can use. So for the first one, contact form submitted, that triggers when a client or potential client, you know, submits a contact form either through your website, or if you've shared them a direct link to the contact form. If they submit it and they provide the proper fields, then this trigger will fire. Brochure submitted is another example of a trigger. If you send your client a brochure and you've included the packages tool in the brochure, the packages tool in the brochure will ask your client to choose, one to many packages. And, obviously you'll be able to capture that information. But once they click submit, then we'll be able to fire this trigger. Contact created fires when you manually create a contact. If the project stage is changed, like for example, if the project stage was in the stage of in planning and then it changes to a review, you can have a trigger for that. Then there's also task created, task completed. Those are pretty self-explanatory. A payment received. So if you receive a payment either through an invoice or through online direct checkout, this trigger will fire. There's also a file completed trigger, and it's sort of a catch-all trigger. You can use it to basically say, if any file within a project is completed, then fire this trigger. But I can also choose if I want a specific file type for the system to keep track of or look out for, if any of these. So for example, if I choose a questionnaire as the file type of being completed, I can also choose for any specific templates that I might have created of a questionnaire. And if I, for example, create a document file and I've created it from a specific type of template and it's been completed, the system will know then that that file has been completed and it's from a specific template that I've specified here, and then it'll fire this trigger. And that's true for any of these file types. Contract signed is, when a contract document file has been completed by both parties, that's when this trigger will fire. And then there's also time-based triggers, and this allows you to basically create almost like a schedule. So if you, for example, every month want to send some sort of, email to your clients or email campaign to your clients, you'd be able to do this. And then finally, we have a webhook received trigger. At the time of this video, this webhook received trigger is just, a placeholder until we completely finish the implementation for this. But this will basically allow you to receive data from outside of Tallyflow and basically create your own custom trigger firing mechanism. So I wouldn't worry too much about this. It's a bit more technical, so I would just stick to these other triggers down here. Each trigger has certain actions that you can do following the trigger. So for example, a more common case of an automation is, sending a follow-up email to your client, letting them know that you've received their request and that you're taking a look and you'll reach back out shortly. So for that, I would create a contact form submitted as a trigger, and I would choose to send an email as the action. And as you can see, the to field will be the person that has submitted the form, which is why it says form submitter. And then you can choose a subject line. You could even add your smart tags into your subject line, something like, hey, client first name, we've received your request. And let me spell received correctly. I before E, except after C. And then I can also add an email body. Hey there, I got it. And then I can even include my signature if I've set that up. I haven't set it up in this account, so I'm not gonna be able to include it. But to include a signature, just click on Insert Signature, and then in the email body itself, I can also add my own smart tags. I'm gonna save and close, and I can save the automation. There's other automations that you can create for various different situations. For example, if if your client has paid an invoice, I can add a send email action, or what another common case would be, I can update the project stage. If if a payment has been received, then I can automatically move it into the completed stage. And that's because maybe in my workflow, I've basically determined that moving or receiving the final payment for a project means that the project has concluded, and that way I can keep track of things. The other thing I could possibly do is, for example, if I want to instead make the payment received trigger move the project stage into something like review. And by the way, all these project stages are fully customizable. But these are just sort of the default ones that exist. So I can name these whatever I want, and I can create whatever order I want. So maybe I have a custom stage called payment received, and maybe what I would want to do after that is I can have basically I can create another trigger, and the trigger could say project stage changed, and then I can make use of something called conditions. Um, so for this flow that I'm explaining right now, what I would like to do is after a payment's received, I would like to move the project stage to the stage review, and then once the system knows that a project stage has moved to review, then I can maybe send an email to either the client or possibly even a partner of mine, to let them know that, hey, the payment's received. Maybe there's a certain set of actions that needs to happen. So, for example, I can do something like this: if the project stage is changed, I can add a condition saying that the current stage is review. And if that is true, then I can add an action like, this is a good example actually. I can add an action, and by the way, I have to connect the fact that it has passed this condition. So conditions are basically like, if if everything before meets this criteria or meets the criteria of this condition, then this action will trigger and it will fire. So, for example, if the project stage has changed, maybe somebody that I'm working with, perhaps a collaborator or sub account user, needs to do something, whatever it might be. So I could create a task, and I can give the task as send a thank you email, and I can give the task a description, and I can even assign it if I want to a contact. So if a payment is received or something like that, I can assign either my own team member or a specific contact. I can even choose a due date, and I can choose relative due dates, like for example, plus 7 days from the start of the project. And I can even choose a priority and save and close. So every time a project stage has changed and the stage is review, so as in the project stage has changed from something else and it now is in the stage of review, then this action will fire. So definitely take some time to explore some of the other triggers and also some of the conditions that have to do with the triggers. You'll find that there's a lot of different powerful ways where you can automate anything that's happening day to day. As always, if there are any questions on automations, feel free to reach out to us or also visit our help center for more documentation on automations and what everything does. Thank you so much for watching.